Hello, YouTubers.
Hi. Welcome.
I'm Polly.
I'm Gina.
And this is Can They Say That?
And today we're going to be talking about something that might feel a little heavy at times, but we're going to try and keep it light. We're going to talk about slaying shame. So this is a topic that we come across a lot in our professional and personal lives.
Yes.
And so just hang with us. This might feel real close to home at times, and we're kind of hoping that it does because at the end, we're going to give you some things to really help deal with this in your lives. So these are things that have helped us, and we hope that they'll help you.
Okay, here we go.
Can they say that?
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 Can they say that? They can, and they will.
Welcome everyone.
Hello.
Hope you're having a good week so far.
Yes, I am Polly.
And I am Gina.
And this is Can They Say That?
And today we are going to talk about shame,
Yes.
but not just shame. We're going to talk about slaying shame.
Dang right.
So we hope that you brought your weapons of mass destruction with you, because our goal is to help you identify it and then eradicate it as much as humanly possible from your lives. So I think the first thing that I kind of wanted to talk about is what we talked about offline, which is there seems to be this wrestling, particularly in the world of psychology, with the word shame. Some people like to say, oh, but there's good shame.
No.
Right. And then there's bad shame. And so I think that because of what has transpired, whether it has always been this way and we just didn't know it, or the research that we're doing now, I think really a better definition of the two or labeling of the two is shame and guilt.
That's good.
And sort of trying to do that and keeping them separate from each other, because there is something to be said for having corrective emotions. And a corrective emotion is an emotion we feel when we've sort of strayed from our values, when we've strayed from what we use as our moral compass. We're violating our own boundaries. And so I think that guilt is something very corrective. I think that it can help us get back on track.
Yes.
When applied to the situation appropriately. But shame, I do not think has the same benefits.
Yeah, I would agree. And so as we get started, I'd like to go ahead and define shame. And that way we have a definition to start with, so you guys know what we're talking about and what we're dealing with. And we've looked at several different definitions. Our favorite has been from Brene Brown. We quote her a lot, so a little shout out to Brene.
Thanks, Brene.
Yeah, she is like the shame queen. Guru?
I don't know.
I mean, her stuff is
She
just
rocks it. That's
all about
what she
slaying
does.
the shame thing. And so
Yes.
I'm going to define it as she has defined it. And it's fairly similar to some of the dictionary definitions, yet she takes it a step further for personal self.
Yeah.
So shame is as intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. Something we've experienced, done, failed to do makes us unworthy of connection. I'm going to say it one more time. So the definition of shame,
According to Brene Brown,
is an intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. Something we've experienced, done, or failed to do makes us unworthy of connection.
So from that definition, what I'm hearing and what I think I've experienced personally and walked through with my clients is that shame says, where guilt will say, here's a thing that you've done or failed to do, and that has caused pain for yourself and others, and that needs to be corrected. Where shame just goes straight to your identity, to your soul, and says, there is something wrong with you. It's no longer about action or inaction. It's just you as a human being.
Yeah, I kept, when you were saying that attacking identity is shame labels you. Shame
yes.
starts to attach those, if you were to do a sticky note label of how you see yourself and some of the things that Gina's about to give a list on, it labels you. You're stupid, you're dumb, and she's going to read this list from Psychology Central,
Yes.
is that right?
So, so basically we're going to talk about the characteristics of shame and when it's toxic in our lives. And this is I think this is a great list. There's certainly not exhaustive, but I think it's a pretty good list. So it can hide in our unconscious so that we're unaware that we have shame. In other words, it's just on low simmer. We operate out of it 24/7, don't even realize it. When we experience shame, it lasts much longer than just shame. Oh, wait, hold on. That's actually something that I did, not who I am. I want to go ahead and correct that and move on, and my identity remains intact. This is the opposite of that. The feeling and pain associated with shame are of great intensity, more so than just your normal, oops, I messed that up, let me fix it. An external event isn't required to trigger it. This one's really important.
Yeah.
Let me say that again. An external event isn't required to trigger it. Our own thoughts can bring on feelings of shame. Just thinking about something and then trying to put yourself in the shoes of being able to actually do the thing, or thinking about a thing that you did that didn't go well or wasn't received well by someone. That's that sort of overwhelming, like nothing happened in the moment. It's just your own thoughts and feelings that are bringing it on. It leads to shame spirals that cause depression and feelings of hopelessness and despair. It causes chronic shame anxiety. So that's where there's constantly that anxiety of, I shouldn't even try anything because I'm not worthy of success. These relationships, these are great people. I shouldn't even try that. I'm not really worthy of love. But there's constantly this anxiety, which can also drive your sense of feeling like you need to perform for value. It's accompanied by voices, images, or beliefs originating in childhood and is associated with a negative shame story about ourselves. Very, very common in my own story and in stories of clients. I can tell you that shame is a pervasive problem when there has been trauma in childhood. It was for me. It still rears its ugly head from time to time for me, and I see this with clients as well. We needn't recall the original source of the immediate shame, which usually originated in childhood or prior trauma. And it creates a deep feeling of inadequacy.
Yes.
Right? So I'm just not enough, unworthy, subpar, all of those things. And unfortunately, this is a thing I had said in a previous episode, that shame actually can not only be a part of your foundation, like the beliefs that you hold about the structure that is all the beliefs that you hold about yourself, but it will also be your ceiling. So it will keep you from reaching those places that you've been created and designed to reach. Because shame will squash you down and say, no, you're not enough. You cannot do those things. You don't deserve those things. Who do you think you are? Those kinds of thoughts. So
I think with shame in my story is how much I hit that ceiling because of what I carried shame-wise. Man, it's a battle and a fight, and sometimes I'd entertain it for long periods of time, just from the beliefs of who I thought I was and the labels that I gave myself of, I'm not smart enough. I didn't finish college. What are some of the other things? If I mess up and not perform all the tasks of motherhood, the shame that I would carry of not being a good enough mom, and am I screwing up my kids and all that, and just the constant. And when I started really capturing those thoughts and started really trying to discover where they were coming from, they weren't mine. They have no validity. And yeah, did I screw up? Absolutely. Absolutely. Yet those screw ups don't make me less than. They give me an opportunity to look at myself and say, hey, there are consequences to your choices. Absolutely. Yet it doesn't get to say who I am in the midst of it. And I get to be stronger, and I get to be, I don't know how to solve all the math problems in the world, but I'm okay with that. And nobody gets to tell me I'm stupid because I can't figure out algebra. And I don't get to carry that shame. And the same thing with my clients. I sit in front of probably every one of my clients wrestles with shame. And that labeling of self, and it's just helping them unpack the beliefs and the roots and all of the expressions of it as well.
Well, I think that, so in my opinion, shame was probably the first emotion experienced post-fall. Theologians, email me if you want. I'm just telling you that's how I see it. I think that because the first question from God was, where are you?
Yeah.
That was not a geographical question.
No.
So they're hiding. Shame causes us to hide. Shame causes us to flee the safe places, the places of emotional safety, the places of relational safety, and even the places of physical safety.
Yeah.
And I think they did this thing that was horribly wrong. Yes, no question about it. They screwed it up for all of us. But I think in that moment, I think it was, okay, now when the eyes are open, the first thing, shame.
Yes.
They're covering themselves. They're immediately making clothing because they were naked and unashamed. Right.
And then they disconnected from source.
Right.
They disconnected from life.
Right.
And they became their own source, and then shame-filled.
Right. And so I think that it does drive us from shame. I think that shame brings us to isolation of those safe places.
Well, and then excuses. If we're not willing to confront the thing that we've done, that there's things that have been done to us that create shame, but then there's also things that we have done that create shame. And can you imagine if Adam and Eve at that time would have walked up to God, and God's like, hey, where are you guys? And it's like, oh my gosh, God, we so screwed up.
Right.
You told us not to do the thing, and we did the thing, and we're really kind of freaked out, and how can we get back to you?
Right.
Can you imagine?
Right.
Instead, they're like, she made me eat it.
Yeah. Well, that creature over there made me eat it.
You gave her to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, that's our theological musings.
Right, yeah.
But I think, underneath all that, the bottom line is that shame does drive us from those places. And I think guilt left unchecked can turn to shame.
Yes.
I think that if we're in a pervasive pattern of the same mistakes over and over again, that guilt can then turn to shame. We go from, I just cannot fix this, I just cannot get this right, there must be something wrong with me, at a deeper intrinsic internal level. So for me, with my experience of shame, my story was so secretive because my adoption stayed in the family. So it was always pss, 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 right? Whisper, whisper about me while I was around. Okay. And in Italian, in a language I couldn't understand, except I knew my name. So the coarse tones of voice and the harsh looks on the faces and a language I couldn't understand with the exception of my name led me to constantly walking around feeling like I had done something wrong, but no one was telling me what it was. So eventually I just assumed that I was wrong. And then you begin to live out of that after experiencing some abuses in my history, some sexual abuse. Then you begin to question your value even deeper. It affirms that story that you had begun to tell yourself based on lies. And then you begin to you're the wounded wounder. So then you make choices, right, that bring you shame. And then you're in that spiral, right? And then you self-medicate, which brings further shame.
Yes.
And you just keep pulling further and further away from those places of safety. And then getting into the church and bringing my story into church, or attempting to bring my story into church, because I hadn't experienced really any healing, but I thought, okay, well, here's this thing, this place now, this acceptance, and I can kind of bring my brokenness, right? Well, because I wasn't flip of the switch fixed,
Right.
now I have shame because, wait, I still am struggling with these things. And so now I've traded for another kind of shame, right? Because you don't want to say, but I'm still struggling, because you don't want to make Jesus look bad.
Right.
You know, I mean, gosh, sorry. Did I just, whoops. But, and of course, that's not real.
Of course, yes.
Of course, but those were all the things that just went on in my head.
Yeah.
And so it just became such a driver for me and kept me in a loop of such hard things.
Yeah.
Yeah, that brought a lot of pain.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. Oh, the shame of the church and the weight of that, and just the fear of, like, I should have all my poop together. And
Did you just say poop?
I did say poop. Well, I can't.
Who
Can I
are
use
you?
the word church and shit in the same sentence?
Sure you can.
Okay, so sorry, y'all. I can say that.
No
because-
shame.
No shame.
There's no shame here. She can say whatever she wants.
Poop.
Because can they say that?
It is true.
Interesting.
And so, but one of the things I had in my notes I wanted to talk about is, we're talking about our own personal shame. And usually you talked about the wounded wounder. When we are raised with, believe in generational, all the things of shame, it's so easy for it to come out of us. And how many times and how many places in what you do as a mom, a dad, a friend, a sister, a teacher, business person, all the encompasses, all the encompass
Everything
everything
that business encompasses.
Goodness, thank you.
You're welcome.
I so need you.
I need you.
In life, and we say to somebody, shame on you. Listen to those words, you guys.
Or don't.
Or don't.
Not too deeply.
But I want you to hear it. Does this come out of your mouth in one form or another? Shame on you. By a look, by a judgment, by a disgust. Just really, we're going to give our actions and questions for just self-growth in a second after she lists some other just indicators of shame. But really pay attention to how you talk to your kids, how you talk to your spouse, how you talk to your brother, your sister, your family, all of that. And is it a projection that you need them to feel shame for you to feel better?
And how do you talk to yourself?
Oh, yes.
Is there something affirming in making your voice to sound like the voices that have thrust that upon you in your past? Are you beginning to sound like them?
Yeah.
And where did that come from?
And I want to reiterate what Gina said earlier. There is no good shame. It is not corrective. It is not encouraging. It is not growing at all. It kills.
Right.
It kills.
Yes.
There is no good shame.
There's guilt and there's remorse, and those are helpful.
Yes.
Again, those are driven by your values.
Yes.
Right, by your moral compass, by your values, by what you've said. This is my line and I will not cross it. So when I cross my own line or I cross someone else's line, I should have some emotions about that. I should feel remorse. I should feel guilt. I should want to correct that.
Yeah.
That's not about who we are. That's about something that we've done. When left unchecked, it turns to shame.
Yes.
That is why we want to keep ourselves in check with those kinds of things. So I think, we've talked about kind of signs of toxic shame, right? So there's something else called shame-based beliefs. And these are beliefs about ourselves, 99% of them, they could be about someone else, but they're really about us. Shame-based beliefs are what we think about ourselves and I want you to listen to this list very carefully because, well, I'll tell you why after. So just listen. I'm stupid. I'm unattractive, especially to a romantic partner. I'm a failure. I'm a bad person. I'm a fraud or a phony. I'm selfish. I'm not enough. I hate myself. I don't matter. I'm defective or inadequate. I shouldn't have been born. I'm unlovable. Now, if you are listening to the list and you say, well, I don't say things like that to myself. Okay. Do you make a mistake in the kitchen and say, oh, I'm such an idiot? Do you get excluded from an invitation and say, well, of course they're not going to invite me. Why would they invite me? I'm not as good as them. Do you look in the mirror and find everything that is wrong with yourself and beat yourself up for every little thing that you do when it's a doing and it becomes a I am a based on an action, right? So take the kitchen thing, for example. I spilled milk all over the counter. Okay. That's an action. I'm an idiot. That's a label. That's a value. That's an identity. That's part of your identity that you're attacking there. So really being mindful of, is that what you're doing?
Yeah.
Are your beliefs more rooted in shame than you think they are?
So that takes us to our actions and our questions for you guys for this podcast time. And you'll find, we'll post that list. Where was that list from? So we can give credit to.
Well, most of it was, I ad-libbed some of it, but
yeah.
sorry.
No, it's okay.
But it originally came from Psych
Shame here.
Thank you. From Psych Central, but I'll post it with the ad-libs. So I'll fix it up.
Perfect.
And then we'll post it.
Perfect. And then that will be in the comments and all of that. And so
Right.
we're going to move into our now what. We sit here and we talk about this, but how do we slay shame? And what do we do with it? First, recognize it.
Yeah.
There's so much power in recognizing and having the realization, the revelation, however you want to say it. It's like, oh, that's shame. Wait a second. That's shame. And you start realizing it. And when you start realizing it, don't be ashamed of how much shame there might be shame there. Don't let that cycle bring you down.
Wow.
Wow. That was a lot of...
That was good.
Yeah. So just be excited that you guys recognized it.
Yes, I like that. If you listened to either one of the lists, hopefully you listened to both of the lists, but if the things on either one of those lists rang really true for you, particularly the first one, where we were talking a little bit more about rooted in childhood, that shame, anxiety, all of those things. If you're experiencing those, if those sounded familiar, if you felt like butterflies in your stomach when you heard us talking about that, if you began to form some pictures and some thoughts in your head around those things, that's the kind of stuff you probably want to get some help with.
Yeah.
Because that's really, really hard to tackle alone without some professional intervention. It is at a very root level that stuff can live. And sometimes we need a professional to help us uproot it and take it out.
That's good. Yeah, I think the definite having a professional help see it, recognize it, walk you through it, and what to do with it. And when you were talking about that list, and if anything stood out, if you felt shame about that list,
Good point.
that it's a definite picture of what's going on in you. And you guys, when you slay this, it's a process. It is a process, and I say this in almost every one of our podcasts. Have grace for yourself.
Oh, yes.
But you get to do this. You don't have to stay stuck. And it might be that 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Any step is huge and awesome and high-fiving right now. Yes. And so, okay, so Our next one is when you experience those feelings. I think you just talked a little bit about that. So what just happened, really recognizing that, and ask yourself, where did it come from? Is this me? Am I hearing another voice?
You might not know. That's
Yeah.
why, that's another reason we encourage getting help, because you may not
Yes.
know where that's
Yes.
coming from.
Yes. And I think that is
I have one more.
okay.
So if you are, if you're in the church, and when I say the church, I'm talking like big C church, you're a Christian, you have Christian friends, you attend a church, all of those things. We hope that your church does this really well and embraces you in the midst of your struggles. However, let us just tell you that if you are still struggling, that does not mean that something didn't take in your salvation, right? That doesn't mean it didn't stick. It just means that it's really at a deep-rooted level, and we are emotional, spiritual, physical, mental people. That's how we've been created. And so a lot of times we have to address more than just one aspect of ourselves. And salvation does cover it all. And yet, at times, we do need to get a little bit more help than what the church can offer.
Yeah. And I always explain it to my clients is it's like having a splinter. And you get the splinter out and you know it's out, but it's still red and it might be a little infected, but you know the splinter's out and that you've worked on it, but there's still kind of remnants of the pain.
good.
There's still kind of remnants of what you've just walked through. It's kind of that raw feeling. And don't let that, the healing, don't let the raw feeling counterfeit what you've actually done.
Yeah. Great.
So, cool.
Awesome.
I would like to end with this. It's another Brene Brown quote because she is the, slaying oh my gosh.
Let me help with that.
Thanks.
She is the queen of slaying shame.
Thank you. Yeah. My shaming is very difficult to say. And I have no shame about it.
Good.
But one of the things she said that is the most profound for me is that vulnerability is the antidote to shame. It kicks shame's butt. Shame wants to isolate you. Shame wants to silence you. Shame wants to keep you oppressed. So you can't get further in that ceiling past that thing. But when you are vulnerable and when you're willing to recognize, to express, to see what's going on, to get help, it slays it. It takes it down.
Yep.
Puts it-
And what, so I just want to say one more thing
Of
really
course.
quick. We're not saying you will never, ever, ever again in your life experience shame. It just happens.
Oh.
It happens. It
Yeah.
just happens. It's what you do with that experience and how quickly you're able to write that response, have a writing response, which is actually what it's called. That's what really matters.
Yeah.
Because I think this side of heaven, we will always have that experience of shame. And yet it's also an opportunity for us to grow, and we don't have to live with it in our lives. It doesn't have to control us. So
That's good. Well, we are so glad you guys joined us. Please, if you feel led to, share our podcast, follow us on Facebook, subscribe to our iTunes channel.
this might be a fun one to do with a friend, by the way.
Ooh, yeah,
If
that's
you
a good
have
idea.
a very close friend who you have had conversations sort of like this, where you know they're struggling too with some of that identity stuff, share this and do some of these lists together. Write the things down that were on those lists. Sort of get your checklist going and help each other, encourage one another in this journey.
Yeah. And in your podcast notes, you will see that we have these actions and questions so you don't have to memorize
Right.
them. And
That's
we'll
right.
also have the resources there. And if you like our Facebook page, we keep posting memes and things like that. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Can They Say That? And we cannot wait to talk with you guys next week.
See you soon. Take good care of yourselves.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, do we have anything we want to say to YouTubers?
Okay, well, I think the only thing is that if you know somebody, you can pass this along
Yes.
to them in video form as well.
Yeah.
And just know if you're experiencing shame, if this came up for you, then please get some help. Work through this, find a trusted friend to take the journey with you. It'll make all the difference in the world. We're praying for you in this journey.
Yes.
And we care about you and you matter.
Yeah. You're worth this.
Yes.
Bye.